She took her glasses. That's good. Good morning, you folks.
Good morning.
How's everybody?
Good.
Are you ready for another one of my messages?
Yes.
Course in Miracles tells us that we only have one problem. And that problem is separation, but the good news, it's already been solved. The bad news is that our egos have split it up into so many interesting names and descriptions that we can't see the solution because we can't see the problem. What's happened is that we have allowed our minds to become possessed by illusions, but the good news is that our spirit is still free. And the illusion is reinforced by the ego, which is basically thoughts and memories of things that have happened and what's going on in the world, etc., but also an untrained mind. It keeps us trapped in the past or the future. But the future doesn't exist, and the past is gone, so what's left now? And the ego would like to usurp God, which is, the Course in Miracles tells us, and takes its place. But the trick is, if you can catch yourself when you start with I, me, or mine, that is a definite signal that the ego is about ready to tell a story that you identify with. And if you are unconscious, which lots and lots of us are, you won't catch it, and it drags you around life by the nose, if you're anything like me. So, in Course in Miracles a couple of weeks ago, I was trying to explain how I use, the metaphor that I use to help explain this concept to me, to help me understand better. And I used in Native American medicine, they use animals for each one of the directions. And the Sioux, the Oglala Sioux, use the mouse for the south and the eagle for the north. And for me, that is an absolutely perfect analogy for what I'm about to share. The mouse, obviously, is a very small animal, very short, little teeny legs, very close to the ground. And I really gave it some thought this morning, and I thought, you know, for what a mouse is, where he lives, where they choose to live, the enormity of the abundance that takes care of that little fella and his family. He's got grains to eat and, you know, and bugs and wonderful branchy stuff to build nests with and so on and so forth. And his world is completely abundant. And the eagle is a much larger creature and has a different set of talents, if you will, and his world is much larger because obviously that's how he was designed. But the thing is that the ego identifies with the mouse and begins to think it is mouse because ego identifies with form. But we are the eagle. And if we can remember that we're the eagle looking through the eyes of the mouse, how much less suffering we will endure. If you separate from your holiness, which most of us have through the ages, it causes us to suffer. And if you think about it, how appropriate is that? Because, you know, I heard years ago that evil spells live backwards. So you're living in the mirror. You're not being with life, which is what we are. The Science of Mind tells us that the only way God can evolve a spontaneous individual is to let him alone and let him discover himself by awakening him, or allowing him to awaken to himself. Revelation, this was actually quite humbling this morning, he says, Revelation says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." And I was like, oh. It's like the song that Tamara just sang, "I'll always be there, I'll always be waiting." You know, that wonderful poem that came out years ago about the footprints in the sand, and you only see the one set is because God is carrying you. Our holiness is closer than our breath. But our ego would like us to believe that that's not possible, that we're less than, that we're all of the things that the collective pain body, the collective pain issue is, that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not the right color, we're not living in the right country, we don't make enough money, whatever the issue is. That's what the ego would like us to believe. as opposed to our divinity. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, on the road to self-discovery, the person must be subject to the laws of reality, and if in ignorance he violates those laws, he will suffer. If you insist that it's winter and you wear a coat in July, you're going to suffer. Now, I thought to myself, God, that's a crazy metaphor, but the really is like, take a look around us. I mean, I don't watch the news, but there's a lot of people who do, and I'm like, it's so insane, this world, that the way the ego drives this world, it is so insane. So wearing a coat in July is not really that far off the mark, is it? How many, if we need to look for insanity, all we need to do is look at maybe issues in our own life or people we have hurt or who have hurt us over something incredibly trivial. And I'm sure there's lots of us who've got those stories over something that is said, it goes in wrong, we twist it into something else, we spin it out as a different story, and we suffer as a result. I had a cute little couple in the shop the other day, and she was telling me about something that was going on with her finger. And her husband came into the room, and he had this look, this suffering look, like, oh, he's like, not the finger story. You know, let Jenny talk, please don't tell the finger story anymore. And I just thought that was so cute, because it's so indicative of how we can, the ego can just blow this teeny little situation like out of all proportion and drive everybody around us completely nuts, including ourselves. So Ernest Holmes says, no divine decree ordains suffering, but it's salutary. And I had to look that up because I didn't know. It means contributing to for a beneficial source. So it leads us to peace, and we find out the suffering is not necessary unless you need it. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of over it. You know, like, I'd really like to stop this. I feel like one of those hamsters on their wheel, and I was like, can we turn this off now? So as we comply with the laws of the universe, we will stop suffering. Eckhart says that the way out of suffering is by being present now, which is all we have. You have to make friends with what is. The world of form will never make us happy. The ego keeps whispering in your ear that if you could just make a little more money, you could just get that extra job. You could get your health in shape. You could lose weight. You could get in shape. You could master painting, a musical instrument. The list goes on forever. If I could just get there, I would be happy. But when you get there, you have a few minutes of happiness and something happens, doesn't it? We have that saying, we're waiting on the other shoe to fall. Things are too good. Something's bound to happen. So you buy this fabulous new car and it breaks down, or somebody bumps you, or you have an accident, or somebody steals it, you know, or whatever that is. You buy a house. It's wonderful for a very long time, and then the woodpeckers are drilling holes in it, and then you know, and you've got mice and spiders if you're like me. And so it's always something. You get this person of your dreams comes into your life, and then you're introduced a few months later to his pain body or her pain body, and you're going, who are you? I don't know that I want to be here anymore. And it goes on and on and on, doesn't it? So we have to, the world of form, and this is so beautiful, that the world of form, like it says in Revelations, behold, I stand at the door and knock, is constantly changing, constantly birthing and dying, shifting and moving because spirit, in my estimation, is trying to consistently redirect us to the errors of our thinking to remind us that we're infinite, that we're love, and that we're life. We're all-seeing, all-knowing. That is our true nature. We don't need to fill ourselves with something to complete us because we are already. We came into this world, they say, to find God again on our own, in our own way, in our own new creative ways that we discover this relationship with ourselves. so the question becomes, how do we transform, which by the way means moving across or through form. I had a client in my shop the other day, and we always have these talks, and I'm glad she gets off on it because I can't seem to shut up. And she said she had these 2 stepchildren she just hates their guts. I mean, she's just like, they're losers, they're drunks, alcoholics, one of them's got a husband in prison, the other one's in welfare and doesn't work, and she had all this judgment about all this stuff. And she's like, how do I see the divine in these people? And I told her a story that I want to share with you, but first I said, you've got to see if you can, first of all, when you say I, first of all, your ego is engaged. So you need to look at your motives about how you're, what's in it for you. And the other thing is that Jesus worked with people who had extreme pain bodies, who lived really terrible lives because they were closer to awakening, perhaps because their suffering had gotten so intense, they're like, I'm over it, I'm done. What can I do to lighten up? And so I told her this story, and a lot of people, I've shared this with you probably before, but I'm going to, please bear with me, and because there's been some new information that's come to me personally this last week about this story that even makes it more profound. But years ago when I was in Los Angeles, I was working in a barber shop, and my boss's wife was very disturbed. She was a very, very disturbed lady. And I was the only person in the shop. Everyone else in the shop was afraid to work next to her. Her husband worked on one side and I worked on the other. And I'd have friends from Al-Anon and AA come into the shop, and I'd cut their hair. And like we did at meetings, I would always, we would hug when we were finished. Well, at some point during that 6-year period that I worked for them, she decided that that was lewd and inappropriate behavior. She decided to have a sexual twist to it. And me being the rebellious person that I am, I decided that there's no way she was going to control me, and I was going to do what the hell I wanted. And there was nothing wrong with what I was doing and her, And so I'd go outside and do it, out of her sight, of course. I'd be respectful, but I wasn't going to stop doing what I wanted to do. So anyway, she tortured and punished me for 3 months. It was really rough, and I was about ready to quit. And my boss says, no, give her time, she'll come out of it. And she accused me of stealing. I mean, she really went for the low blows. And so anyway, one night, I guess I had had a particularly horrible day, but I was on the way home, and I was very angry, and I was white-knuckling the steering wheel. and I said, God, I want her to suffer. I want her to suffer so bad. And I heard this voice in my head that said, how much more, Jenny, would you have her suffer? How much more? And I was healed like that, and I thought, I was so humbled, and I said, I wouldn't wish on her what she had, because I knew she was very disturbed. I could tell you stories, and it's just like, wow, she really needed help. She really did. And so the next morning I went into the shop, and I'm standing there looking at her, and one of the very few places that we had a point of communication, and I have to tell you that it was quite fun, was that we would look at catalogs that we got in the mail. At that time, you get a stack of catalogs like that every day, and we would just flip through them during the slow times and say, oh, I like this, and I like that, and what I could do in the house, and we would just share creative ideas. And I think back on it now, and I'm thinking, God, you're so smart, because that game had been in place for a long time before. So we would come in and look at new catalogs every single day or every couple of days or something. And I'm standing there looking at her and this battle and this feud we had been engaged in. And I saw and I thought, she's too self-righteous and too proud to ever acknowledge that she was wrong. But what I saw that day was how much she